It's been a busy political weekend. Conservatives have given a resounding yes to Pierre Poilievre's leadership. Poilievre was facing a mandatory leadership review. He sailed through that with an endorsement of 87.4%. Those are the delegates supporting him to stay on as Conservative leader. That leadership review was held over the weekend in Calgary. Poilievre addressed the crowd moments before that voting started.
So why keep going? Because we want our kids to have the same promise that we had. Because we want them to know that when you care about something, you work for it. When you believe in something, you fight for it. And most of all, when you start something, you never give up.
This leadership review came after a rocky year for Poilievre, starting all the way back in April, of course, when the Conservatives lost the election, and Pierre Poilievre lost his own seat, and then more recently, when two of his MPs crossed the floor to join the Liberal Party. That happened before the holidays. Yesterday, while in Calgary, I spoke to Alberta Conservative MP Shivaloy Majumdar and Ontario Conservative MP Michael Barrett. They were both at the convention in Calgary, where just hours earlier, Poilievre received that strong endorsement. Joining me now, Michael Barrett and Shivaloy Majumdar. Nice to see you both.
Good morning.
Okay, so how are we feeling this morning with this result in support of the leader, Michael?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
87.4. It's a good number. It's a good day to have a good day. This follows, of course, a speech from Mr. Poilievre that laid out his hopeful message, the hopeful message from Canada's Conservatives about what we want to see, and this is what not only have I heard talking to delegates from across Canada over this weekend, but the speech that Mr. Poilievre gave yesterday is a reflection of the feedback that he's heard through thousands, if not tens of thousands of conversations over the last year.
Okay, and I want to talk more about the speech and some things that he talked about or didn't talk about, but what did you make of the number?
Listen, this is a united, hopeful party. We've confirmed that. It's the largest convention in Canadian history. It's Calgary. I think that you felt the electricity that the leader was able to connect with in this room. It's certainly something, as Michael said, a result of thousands of conversations across the country. We know our movement is strong, hopeful, united, resolute. We have a leader that's a litigator and up to the job, and our party's endorsed that direction wholeheartedly. So I think stay humble, work hard is exactly what the leader would expect we do, and I'm energized by the result.
What has to happen now in Ottawa, inside caucus? Like, how does this translate into how you all approach your job and how Pierre Poilievre approaches his job, Michael?
Well, you look at some of the changes that you've seen since the last election. There's been legislation, government legislation, if not signature from Mr. Carney's government, that we saw was in the best interest of Canada. Now, at the time, we said with things like the One Canadian Economy Act that we would have done more so that we could go further, faster, but we supported that legislation. The same is true with some tax cuts that they've made. We're supporting
bail you're going to move forward with quickly? Yeah.
Absolutely, because it's going to make our community safer. And this is so important because at this time we want to demonstrate that that we can work together on shared priorities when they reflect what Canadians are hoping from us.
And is that difficult to do sometimes to show you can collaborate on the issues that matter to Conservatives while still holding the government to account on other issues?
When Liberal ministers gaslight you, it makes it a little more difficult. Let's be clear. It's not exactly that the Carney Liberals have been full partners in working together to get things done in this country. For a year now, they've had the support of Conservatives on all of these issues, and they're slow rolling it. I'm not sure if it's a matter of competence or capability, but I know that we are a voice for millions of people who are extremely desperate with food insecurity going through the roof. We've got, I hear it in my own riding. People have to take things out of their shopping cart just to be able to make ends meet. These are very serious, heady issues and requires a serious effort. And so I think, as recently as last week, we proposed a Sovereignty Act that would unlock our resources and have massive consequences for our country. I think the big ideas that we have been championing all along are the ones we'll keep proposing, because that's what we've been asked to do by the people who support us.
Okay, how do you put that? I agree all those issues matter to Canadians. Polls show that too. But how do you put all of that inside the context of what the world is dealing with? Global upheaval, Donald Trump, threats of sovereignty against other nations, tariffs. Like, how do you work both of those? Because that's the piece that we didn't hear a lot about last night. A little bit, but not a lot.
Mr. Poilievre has been crystal clear, as have all members of our caucus, that we want Prime Minister Carney to get a good deal for Canada, and we want to help him get a good deal. Part of that means that we need to be negotiating from a position of strength. We've been expressing that we need to show that we have other customers, that we have new export markets, and Mr. Poilievre has talked about that, and he did address that about getting our natural resources to Tidewater is going to do a lot in that respect. And we heard him address the needed investment, massive investment in our Canadian forces, because that's part of being able to express our sovereignty.
Yeah.
And we've been clear that we'll work with Mr. Carney's government again to bolster our military, to get to new trade markets, to try and get a good deal for Canadian workers and Canadian families with the U.S. But again, as Shuv said, this is a two-way street, and we extend our hand to try and get some things done, and they need to work in that spirit of collaboration as well.
But is it hard, I guess, is my question, to criticize the government on its approach with Donald Trump, for instance, and not look like you are somehow undercutting the Prime Minister or hurting the country? Or do you know what I mean? Like, how do you thread that needle as an opposition party? Because that seems challenging to me.
Well, Rosemary, we are a democracy in which constructive criticism and proactive proposals are welcome.
Right.
An act of criticizing the government is an act of loyalty to country to make sure we make the right decisions. And energetically so. You have a Prime Minister who has said that on one side, Donald Trump is a transformational president, and on the other side, Canada belongs in Beijing's New World Order. These are confusing signals to Canadians and to the world. The best way to build strength and sovereignty for our country are the things that Pierre Poilievre talked about last night, which was to unleash our resources, be our best customer, get our product to market, build up our national defense to go it alone if we have to.
There you are. You're criticizing the moves that he's made against China, but you both say that he needs to diversify trade. Why would you not go to China and try and find markets there?
The center of gravity of global growth for the next half century is the Indo-Pacific region. It involves billions of people and many countries, from Korea to Japan to Australia and others.
They're working all of those countries, but you seem...
But a new strategic partnership that's focusing on, and to Xi Jinping's face, describing him as an important leader in a new world order is a very dangerous thing to do at this time.
Okay, but you're not against him seeking those trade relations with China, are you?
Strategic management of China is, I think, the better approach for the government to take when it comes to China. Strategic partnership with TPP nations, Quad nations, partners in the region that actually share our values and our strength of supply chain security is obviously where we need to spend our time.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about national unity, because that was also something that came up in the speech. He alluded to Quebec, and he alluded to where we are in Alberta, obviously. He blamed the Liberals for a lot of it, but it's any government's responsibility to hold the country together. How concerned are you about that, and how the government is handling that, and then how you as Conservatives need to respond to those threats that are real, whether they're about to happen, I don't know, but they are real.
We need to take any threat of separation seriously, because we are stronger together as one country, and it's about respect. We need to make sure that we're respecting the province's areas of jurisdiction, making them, treating them as equal partners, and really, what we've seen is that when it's been inconvenient over the last 10 years, that the Liberal government has disregarded that this is a partnership. And what we've seen... And
you think that feeds into independence movements? That's your suggestion?
Well, absolutely. And people I'm not an Albertan.
No, nor am I. We'll ask him in a minute.
I'm not a Quebecer.
Yeah.
But what I've heard are genuine sentiments from people in those provinces and from those provinces, and it needs to be taken seriously. And what do they want? They want a fair deal. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you get told that your way of life is a thing of the past, and that you need to retool and keep it in the ground, for people who have very dirty hands, but make clean money for everyone in this country, that's a very disrespectful approach. And so are we seeing signals of a change from Mr. Carney? We've heard words. What we want to see is action, and that's what we deserve. And I think that would demonstrate the partnership that a lot of folks are looking for.
And that's certainly what the MOU, part of the intent behind the MOU that the government signed with Alberta, was to try and deal with some of the things that Michael's talking about, people in Alberta frustrated with the way they've been treated previously. What is your position on Alberta independence and how that should be dealt with inside the Conservative Party?
Western resentment is a result of having our industry and our workers being attacked systemically for a decade. Quebec separatism is a result of an imposed idea of post-national ideology, saying that our nation has no ideology, we have no identity, we have no place, no sense of history. It's not an accident of history that under Liberal rule is when you find Canada most disunited.
I don't know if that's true. You find referendums. I don't know if you see it.
Referendums is probably the most dangerous expression of getting close to the brink of losing the country, as it did under Chrétien.
The Bloc Québécois was formed under Brian Mulroney.
It was an aftermath of that result.
Anyway, go on.
My point, though, is it was Stephen Harper over a decade ago that resolved these resentments and had a confederation that worked. Because, as Michael said, there was respect across the federation for how our country ought to be governed.
But as an Alberta MP...
I'm a proud Albertan who believes in a strong Canada, that this would never have been an issue had Liberals all along understood that we have something to contribute here, we have a stake in the future of our country, and we're keen to build. But if the country keeps turning its back, if federal government politicians keep stirring the hornet's nest with their policies and their bait and switches, then they're not doing a service to the unity of this country.
Quick 30 seconds to both of you. What do you want to see the leader do next?
This is about, again, what all Canadians want to see, actions following words. And Mr. Poilievre has committed to delivering results for Canadians. We talked about the Sovereignty Act. We talked about working with the government where it makes sense to get results for Canadians, getting a good deal for Canada with the U.S., trying to work with the Liberal government to achieve that. And so that's exactly what you're going to see from Conservatives when we get back to Ottawa, and we're going to do it while we're holding them to account. As Shuv said, it's an act of loyalty.
Last word to you.
I think we're going to be energetic in the spring. Michael has said it exactly right. We're here to be a constructive opposition. We want to get things done. The stakes are too high in this country for gamesmanship. And we've got a serious set of proposals that Pierre Poilievre laid forward before the party and the country yesterday. And we really sincerely hope that we can find a way to get those done.
Shuv, Michael, thank you both so much for being here. I'll see you back in Ottawa. Appreciate it.
Safe travels.
See you.
Thank you.
Alberta was front and center this weekend for the Conservative Party convention. Pierre Poilievre will stay on as leader after securing that strong endorsement from his party. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith delivered a speech at the convention just yesterday endorsing Poilievre and highlighting the Conservatives' commitment to getting new pipelines built.
You see, Conservatives supported building new pipelines long before the elbows up crowd, and they will support them long after all the elbows come down.
During her speech, Smith opted not to get into the developments surrounding meetings between separatists from her province and Trump administration officials, a topic that has made its way back into the headlines last week. I did meet up, though, with the Premier in Calgary just yesterday, and I asked her about that issue, as well as Alberta's relationships with Ottawa and other provinces. Premier Danielle Smith, nice to see you.
So nice to see you in person.
Yeah, in your home province. Beautiful weather in Calgary. Can't believe it.
You came on a good week. It's not always like this, but we made sure the weather was good for all of the delegates coming from across Canada.
Fair enough. Lots of questions for you. I want to start with what we saw here over the past couple of days. A very high approval rating for Pierre Poilievre, 87.4. You endorse the leader too. What message do you think it sends that he's coming away from this review with that?
Well, I don't think there's any question that his party is behind him, and that's what we need, because I think that has been in the news cycle for a lot of months, and it undermines the work that he's really doing, which is trying to make sure that the agenda that he ran on is well known by the public, but he also wants to make sure that the Prime Minister, who committed to a lot of the same things that were on the Conservative platform, actually implements them, including the MOU that we signed.
Yep.
So having him there as a strong voice and having him as a strong Alberta voice as an Alberta MP, with this strong endorsement, it's going to make his job easier, and I'm hoping for a lot of success there.
You spoke to delegates who were very supportive of Mr. Poilievre. You had lots of criticism for Justin Trudeau. You didn't really say anything bad about the current Prime Minister and Mark Carney. How are you trying to balance that relationship?
Well, I can tell you the reason why the Liberals won the last election is that they ripped off a lot of the Conservative platform. They abandoned a lot of the core policy that had been grievances for the entire country. The carbon tax, they talked about being an energy superpower.
Yep.
And these were all things that were in the Conservative platform, so I think that Canadians said, let's give it a chance. So my view is, let's make sure that the Prime Minister commits and follows through on the things that he promised. And having a strong opposition party saying the same thing, I think that's exactly what an opposition leader should do.
Do you need a Conservative movement, though, if you have a Prime Minister, even on the other team, who's doing a lot of the things?
Well, I can say that I have a pretty good relationship with the Prime Minister, but not with all of his ministers and caucus. And I think that that's something to remember, that many of the people who are at the table and many of the people who are in his caucus still hold on to the same views that they have for the last 10 years, that Alberta's a problem, our economic wealth is a problem, developing is a problem, so keep it in the ground. And that is not going to happen. So I'm encouraged to see that the Prime Minister continues to be strong on that message, but without a strong opposition, there could be some slippage, because we certainly saw a lot of slippage in the last 10 years, and it's not been good for the people of my province.
You met with the Prime Minister, you met with the Premier of British Columbia last week. I noted that Alberta Liberal MP Corey Hogan said that there's a lot of common ground.
Yeah.
Where is the common ground between Alberta and BC? Because it's not very clear to me publicly where that common ground is.
Well, I can tell you, Premier Eby and I have a lot of common ground on developing LNG. That's really important for both of our provinces, especially if we can put pipelines into certain interconnections, we can get our product to the coast as well, which will benefit our pricing. So we're on board with that. We have talked about an ammonia strategy. Unfortunately, it looks like it had been rejected federally, but maybe we can resurrect that, because there's many nations in the world that want to co-combust ammonia with coal to reduce their emissions profile. Okay. We're on board with that. Interties are very important. He was in the middle of a drought, which created some instability in their power, and so we can sell wind and solar. I think there's common ground there. We have a biodiesel factory or a plant in the Edmonton area that produces biodiesel to meet their green fuel standards. And as you can see, I can go on and on. So we talk about the things where we can agree. And I heard the concerns about the Kitimat port perhaps being a port that was a little bit too difficult to navigate because of that channel. So we're looking for a deep water port so we can address the safety issues, address the routing issues, consult with nations and make sure that nations understand we want them to be a large player from an equity point of view, so that their people will be able to benefit from hundreds of millions of dollars per year in additional revenue so they can support their communities. So those are the things that we're addressing.
I was surprised to hear you so definitively rule out Kitimat. Is it solely because of the route? Is it because of the First Nations concerns? Was that something that Premier Eby said to you, wait, this really isn't going to work?
No, to be frank, when I was outside the media and this was being proposed, I looked at the map and I said, why in the world is it going to Kitimat instead of Prince Rupert? Yeah. And then I saw a video of what it would be like to navigate through that channel. I think it's 158 kilometers of channel. I thought that seems to me the potential for getting
problematic.
Yeah. So I have always felt like, why didn't they go spend the extra $300 million and go to Port-au-Prince Rupert? And in fact, that's what it was. It was a money decision at the time, which seems kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. If there had been some openness for us to affirm a better port, then perhaps we would have got more buy-in. So that's what we've been looking at, is where are the deep water ports that are right on the shore so that you don't have to navigate through those channels, and we're finding a few options for that.
And does Prince Rupert seem possible when you're talking Premier Eby? Is that something he's more willing to consider?
You'll have to ask Premier Eby, because I don't want to speak for him. I do like to talk about the things where I know we have some common ground. I know he still has some reservations, but it's up to me to make sure that we're listening to them, addressing them in a meaningful way, but and ensuring the Indigenous consultation and buy-in. I think he was very encouraged to hear that my Indigenous Relations Minister has already started the engagement, has been out to various sites many, many times, and is going to continue that work until the formal consultation begins.
And do you think if the right route is chosen and you get those consultations done, that a proponent will emerge? I mean, you must be talking to someone to have the confidence that will happen.
Well, we're talking to all of them. We've got all of the pipeline companies who are involved in our advisory committee helping us find the route. So they'll all have the same technical information, they'll all have the same scoping information, the same costing information, and whether it is one or more of them, I would fully expect that once we have some positive affirmation that it's going to go ahead, that we have the route, that we've got the Indigenous stake worked out and the Indigenous ownership, then I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to get it done.
I want to talk a little bit about separatism. Is it appropriate, do you think, for members of the Alberta Prosperity Group to meet with officials from the Trump administration and to discuss money?
Well, I would put it the other way. I mean, I think that it is up to the American administration to respect Canadian sovereignty and to respect that this is a decision that should be made in Alberta by Albertans, and that if they have any official discussions, it would be with those who have been elected to represent the people.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of undermines you, does it not?
Well, I guess I don't feel so, because I have a really good relationship with the U.S. ambassador. I've got an envoy in Ottawa as well as in Washington who is working every single day to build those relationships. And so we're doing a lot of work on the ground every day, meeting with lots of people.
Did you talk to, I think you met with Ambassador Hoekstra last week. Did you say something to him about how you would like him to, the administration, to follow the proper channels when discussing this issue?
It didn't come up. Okay. But I did talk to my James Carpenter after I saw that it was in the news. I did talk to James Carpenter, who is my Ottawa representative, and and I asked him to raise it with the ambassador, as well as my envoy in Washington to raise it with them in the U.S.
Other premiers had a lot to say about this. Premier Ford said you should denounce it, and you did not do that.
Well, there's a lot of hurt people here. I mean, when I look at the movement, I see as 30% or more of Albertans have given up on the country. That's distressing, and that is a sign, I think, of a loss of hope. And it's my job to restore hope. But I'm not going to. I'm not going to demonize a million.
You're not demonize them, but why can't you say this isn't the path
a million
forward?
Albertans? I just feel like it's my job to allow for a bit of a pressure release valve. If people feel this way, they need an avenue to be able to express it. So I'm going to watch and see how the petition plays out. We'll know by the end of May if they have enough signatures to go to a vote, and if so, then we'll schedule that probably for the fall.
That seems risky. That seems risky to me, particularly at a time when there are real threats to our sovereignty that are coming from the outside.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you have the same conversation in Quebec where they're about to elect a Parti Québécois leader. I think it's far more risky.
I ask questions there too.
I think it's far more risky to have this question drag on for years. If this is an acute issue that we're facing because of the last 10 years of being treated so badly by Trudeau, if there is a new government, there's a sort of a recognition of whether or not he's moving in the right direction. I think he's doing many things in the right direction. I think he'll do a lot more with the help of a strong opposition leader. But that, to me, is a demonstration of why there's some urgency. We've got to address the issue of getting the MOU implemented and getting to it and demonstrating that we're going to develop our resources again. And we've got to address some of the big issues like the gun buyback, which is unpopular everywhere except for Quebec, and it's a constant source of irritation. The person who's leading the petition campaign is a gun shop owner, and he has a federal government that has made him a criminal for part of his inventory that he holds, made his customers criminals with just the stroke of a pen. And those are the kind of things that are unnecessary. When we have so much we can agree on, let's go after the bad guys. If we want to go after guns, let's get the ones that are legally coming across the border. So I made that point to the Prime Minister as well, that it's not just one thing that is going to win Albertans' trust back. There's a whole series of things that the Trudeau Liberals did that went not only against our economy, but also against our values and way of life.
And I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Prime Minister does get that. I think that's part of what the MOU was about.
He's part Albertan. I think
that's right. So
he's
he's live to it. But do you not think that you're somehow enabling the conversation around separatism by allowing this to play out without you saying, I'm not saying demonize them, I'm just saying this isn't the way forward. I'm going to make things better for you as Premier, hang tight.
Well, that's what I have said.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I have said. I said I believe in a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, a federal government that stays in its area's jurisdiction, that honors and respects our areas of jurisdiction, treats us with respect, allows us to develop our wealth so that we can all benefit.
But you're also allowing the idea for a referendum to go forward, clearly because, I don't know what, you think that once they have a kick at the can, the story will be over?
Well, as
or?
you know, I inherited citizen initiative referenda, and there's a number of petitions that are going forward. There's a petition that has gone forward looking at the funding of independent schools. There's a petition going forward that's looking at the development of grassy mine coal down in southern Alberta. I do believe the citizen initiative is a mechanism for people to address things that we as a government would not put on the table. We as a government are not putting this on the table, but we're allowing citizens to demonstrate if they care enough about it. Get 177,000 signatures. We'll put it to a vote of their fellows.
Okay. Premier Smith, we'll leave it there. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre secured that strong endorsement in his leadership review late Friday night, a sign that a large majority of party members still want him, still united behind him. But can he now grow that support among the rest of the country? And how does Prime Minister Mark Carney's surging popularity following that Davos speech factor into all of this? Joining me now to talk about it, David Coletto from Abacus Data and Eric Grenier from TheWrit.ca. Nice to see you both again, gentlemen. It's been a while, but we thought this was a good moment to do a touch base and see where things are at. But let's start with Pierre Poilievre. And I'll start with you, David Coletto. 87.4%. What do you make of that result?
Well, it matches what we were seeing in the polling we did. We put out a poll in the days leading up to the convention that showed among the conservative base, which isn't always going to be reflective of the people who show up at a convention, among those that said they thought Poilievre should hold the job, that was around 84%. So that data matched what we saw at the convention, which is Mr. Poilievre remains overwhelmingly popular among conservative supporters, among the conservative base. They think he's more electable. He makes the party more electable, that he's aligned with how they view the world. And so, we shouldn't have been surprised that he got that kind of margin. I think we always hope that there's some differences, but that wasn't the case this time.
Yeah, we look for drama. That's true, but it was a strong showing for Mr. Poilievre. Eric, was it sort of what you were expecting too in the analysis that you had done?
Yeah, I think so. Getting somewhere around 86, 87, 88% is usually what a leader who is in the kind of position that Pierre Poilievre should get. He wasn't someone who just won an election, who had just made a huge breakthrough for a party that never had before. When that happens, you can sometimes see leaders get into the 90s and sometimes into the high 90s. So for him to get something in the mid 80s like he did there, I think it kind of was enough to silence any critics that he has, a big groundswell of opposition within the party. Not so much as to say that he is, completely untouchable. But I think it's a good score, probably a little bit better than some people were afraid of. No one wanted to say he was going to get anywhere close to 90. No one wanted to say he was going to get under 80, which would have been a problem. But I think that is enough for him to continue and move on to the next challenges that he faces.
Okay, so let's talk about what those challenges are, because it is about then trying to find support more broadly by the time we get to an election. What do you see there, David, in terms of his ceiling and his floor? Where does the potential expansion come from for him?
Well, a few things. One is the similarity between the conservative base, those who say they would only vote conservative, and those right now, the broader group who say they would vote conservative in our polling, showed not a lot of difference, which tells me that 41% that the Conservatives got last time isn't rock solid, but I would say that floor is quite high, probably higher than it's been over the last number of years. Now, the challenge is growing that. And I think it all depends on what kind of environment are we going to be in when that next election comes. Is it going to be primarily a two-party race outside of Quebec, or is the NDP post new leader going to grow? Because I think under the first scenario, the Conservatives are going to have a hard time growing. There aren't a lot of people left who say, look, I'm open to voting Conservative. I like Pierre Poilievre. Compared to Mark Carney, I think he's the man for the moment. In scenario 2, where the NDP might find some traction, then I think all bets are off. Then it becomes possible. But I look at the data and say, no matter what happens, I think it's going to be hard for Mr. Poilievre to grow, but it doesn't mean they can't win, given just how rock solid that base really is for them.
So how much of it, given what David just said there, Eric, how much of it would depend on the success of the Bloc and the NDP? Because we've seen their numbers pretty soft still. So if they don't get a little better, that the chances of the Conservatives easily winning an election becomes more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. We see some polling, just Leger came out this week, had the NDP even lower than they were at the last election. That is just absolute death for the Conservatives. The Conservatives cannot win an election if the NDP is in single digits or even in the low teens. They need the NDP to come back to be where it was before. And it just seems so far right now for the NDP that it just does not seem likely, at least in the short term. To see the NDP getting a post-leadership election boost to maybe 10, 12%, you can imagine that getting back to the 18, 20% that they were before Justin Trudeau's resignation, that seems like that would be really tough. For the Bloc Québécois, we've seen the same kind of thing, especially post-Davos. Running into that speech, the Bloc was starting to build up a little bit of momentum. We were seeing a lot of polls having them within just a few points of the Liberals in Quebec. Some even had them ahead. But the last set of polling that we've seen post-Davos has shown a big jump in support for Mark Carney. The Bloc has fallen back. So the Conservatives do need some help from the other side. But as David said, they need help from people who aren't currently voting for them. And that is the biggest issue right now for him, because Mark Carney does not score extremely highly among NDP or Bloc supporters, but there is still a pool of voters within those that support those parties that like Mark Carney. You just do not see that for Pierre Poilievre. So he really needs to max out all the voters that he has, because there's not a lot of indication that he can grow. So if his strategy is entirely based on just expecting the Liberals to falter, to fall back, there's not a lot of, that's a very passive strategy. Conservatives need to grow if they're going to win the next election.
Okay, so David, touch on what Eric just said there. That's Mark Carney's numbers, which had a real boost since that speech in Davos. Not sure it's reflected in the party numbers. So he maintains that he's still the big get for the Liberal Party as opposed to Pierre Poilievre.
He is, and sometimes things like approval rating or favorability towards the leader are the leading indicator, and vote might come later. But this has no doubt been, from a polling perspective, a great week for Mark Carney. In our polling, he's hit, the highest favorables we've ever measured for him since he became prime minister. The government's approval rating's up. Even the mood of the country is slightly up, which tells you that all of these things kind of are moving together. And, to Eric's point, 1 in 5 conservative supporters, right now they wouldn't vote Liberal, also say, though, I like Mark Carney. And so he is no doubt pulling the Liberal brand up and putting them in a place. One other stat from our polling, Rosie, we asked people, do you want a change in government, or, is there no alternative, or is there an obvious alternative? For the first time since we've tracked in over 2 years, more people think the Liberals deserve to be reelected than feel, that they absolutely don't. And so that's a signal of also the kind of environment that Pierre Poilievre is competing in. He's no longer clearly up against a deeply unpopular prime minister. Mark Carney is now, I would say, popular, well-respected, and has broad support. And that's that may change, but right now that's the context setting so much of what's happening in Ottawa.
Okay. Listen, I love talking to both of you all the time, so I'm glad we made some time to do that this weekend. Thank you both so much. David, particularly from dialing in from Mexico. Eric Grenier, good to see both of you. Thanks.